HD3.
Leaving but not going far. I'm Richard Jordan, Fox News. Defense Secretary Mark Esper says U.S. troops leaving Syria aren't coming home, and the U.S. isn't leaving the Middle East. Those exiting Syria will instead go to western Iraq.
The U.S. Secretary of Defense saying that en route to Afghanistan, saying that the 700 to 1,000 U.S. troops that are being withdrawn from Syria will be moved to western Iraq. Now, one of their key missions, besides bolstering the Iraq government, will be to monitor the Islamic State. There were widespread concerns, not only in the U.S., but really from leaders around the world, that ISIS could have a resurgence in Syria should the U.S. troops pull back. The Secretary of Defense also said he was not ruling out any cross-border strikes against any resurgent ISIS.
Fox's Steve Harrigan in Erbil, Iraq. A tornado touched down in Dallas near Love Field Airport.
Trees are down on some cars. One woman just said that her home is damaged. We also got reports that police are responding to a structure collapse. We're told that it's an apartment complex. Not sure if there's any injuries or if the apartment was occupied at the time.
Reporter Stephen Dial from Dallas Fox affiliate KDFW. So far, no reports of any injuries. 2 bodies are still trapped under the rubble of the Hard Rock Hotel in New Orleans that partially collapsed last week. Controlled explosions took down 2 cranes at the site.
Move forward with assessing as we're doing now, and that leads into recovery. That's what it's about right now, recovering our people who are still in that building.
New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell, the rest of the hotel will likely be demolished. A small plane went missing in North Carolina. Officials at Raleigh-Durham International Airport say air traffic control lost radar contact with the Piper PA-32 as it approached a runway. No word on how many people may have been on board. America's listening to Fox News.
Did you know that home loan rates have plunged again? Would you like to take advantage of these lower rates to help lower your monthly payments? Refinancing doesn't have to be for another 30 years. It can be for 10, 15, or 20 years. It's up to you. Reduce your monthly payments. Pay off your loan earlier. At Bank Pacific, where we're open to closing your loan in a hurry.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Credit conditions apply.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Calaguan Hapa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mescla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mescla, a true taste of Guam.
It's a lunch Republican Senator Rand Paul may not soon forget.
The Kentucky lawmaker is on a nationwide tour promoting his new book, The Case Against Socialism. While taking a break for lunch in California, he was confronted.
You just ran into 2 people from New York, kiddo, and we're not putting up with your Republican.
Paul's deputy chief of staff capturing video of the moment and posting it on Twitter, writing, "While having lunch with Rand Paul in California, we got verbally assaulted by these aggressive libs complaining about incivility." Paul retweeted the video, urging voters to watch it and decide who the rude ones are. Marcus White, Fox News.
A military cadet at West Point remains missing since Friday. Officials say there's no indication the cadet poses a threat to the public. West Point says it increased military police patrols as a precaution. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, encouraging and reminding people to get screened for breast cancer. Some question a new technology and who is benefiting.
3D mammograms often are recommended for screening. Diane Zuckerman, president of the Cancer Prevention and Treatment Fund at the National Center for Health Research, says new technology is not always better. She questions the additional cost of a 3D screening and who's paying for it. She says if she has trouble determining hype from fact, how can the average patient? An analysis in 2018 did show 3D screening picked up about 1 extra tumor for every 1,000 screenings. 3D also could be more effective with dense breast tissue. A Kaiser Health News investigation shows during the past 6 years, manufacturers of 3D equipment paid doctors and teaching hospitals $9.2 million related to 3D mammograms. Much of the money was used for speaking fees, consulting, travel meals, or drinks. Ann Carrick, Fox News.
Country music duo Brooks and Dunn joined the Country Music Hall of Fame. Singer Ray Stevens and record executive Jerry Bradley were also inducted for their contributions. I'm Richard Jordan, and this is Fox News.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Good afternoon and welcome to Tall Tales for Monday, October 21st. I'm Daryl Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie, who will be back before Thanksgiving. So we look forward to his return. Until then, I'll be with you today until 6 o'clock. And thank you so much for tuning in. I've been getting some feedback while I'm on the road and finding out that there are more and more and more people who are paying some attention to whether it is they're acting on what I'm saying, but at least they're listening in to find out just what I might be doing here between 4 and 6 o'clock. You are among that group, and I thank you very much for making this time here on the radio productive, and well, we'll see how productive it is. I guess it's productive for me, but how productive is it for us? And let me go on here and find where do I need to go to get to see you on Facebook Live. You can also call us here to let us know what's on your mind after this weekend. Thank goodness it looks like a tropical storm or a typhoon outside. Isn't it gorgeous out there for a typhoon day? Just wonderful. Just look around and count your blessings. It's wonderful. Been out in it all day. Not in it, but driving around the island, as I don't get to do very often, but down to Agate and to Talafofo today. And so, good day. I've had a good day. I hope you have too. So 888-8255 is the number here at the station. You're welcome to call in and share with the rest of us what it is that is on your mind, or to respond or react to something that I might be saying here. And don't have, you can go to Facebook Live and say hi there as well. Let's see. Adjust this a little bit. Oh, the red eye. Yeah, for those of you watching, I have a little trick here. And thanks to my friend Ken, he pointed out that I had this, the light in my eyes here. Okay, how's that? Okay, no more red eye. Okay, don't have anything for Second Amendment, and maybe that's good news. No news is good news sometimes. So that's just fine. I've got nothing in particular about gun control. And again, maybe that's good news. That there are other things going on in the world and the nation today that, other than somebody trying to take away your Second Amendment rights. But we'll keep an eye out. And I'm sure if something catches Bob's eye, he'll send it on to me and make sure that I can share it here on Tall Tales. So let's go straight on to our next feature, Zami Ikatni. again, it's an interesting. It's an interesting. We've got a weekend, right? And we've got today, and we've got the whole weekend of editorials. But I've only found one worth really mentioning. I'll mention the second one, but today's PDN editorial is Yet Again Truth Outed, which is a reprint from USA Today. So we will simply mention it, that's the editorial for today in the PDN. And the Guam Daily Post editorial for today is Reform School Will Keep Students Safe. Reform School Will Keep Students Safe. And we'll get to that in just a moment. And just to keep PDN kind of in the running here, I see the Pacific Sunday News editorial is Still Up in Smoke. And so we'll consider that today as well. But first, let's go to the Guam Daily Post editorial, which is a relatively short editorial. Reform School Will Keep Schools Safe. Students safe. There we go. And if I look on Facebook Live, like my eyes are starting to swell up, well, they are. And I've determined that even though I was under the weather back on Friday, it was really an allergy. After spending $150 on medical care and medicine that didn't do anything, I dropped an antihistamine and shazam. But it's about to wear off. And so you may see me just puff up and turn totally, reacting before your very eyes. But let's get through this because I may not be able to see by 6 o'clock. Okay, education officials, a parent representative, and other school community stakeholders recently met in another effort to address violence in some of the island's public high schools. The recent riots were sparked by students who came to their campuses drunk. Other students have brought alcohol onto campus and conducted their drinking sessions at school. Student teachers and teacher aides have seen students bring liquor to public schools disguised in other beverage containers. Just last week, 2 John F. Kennedy High School students were taken into custody and charged with being drunk in school. What these incidents tell us is that the school administration is trying to do what it can to remove these students from the school campus. What this also tells us is our school administrators cannot be expected to spend most of their time dealing with problem students while also expecting them to ensure each school provides adequate education for the rest of the students. Hundreds of students in each campus who have the earnest desire to learn and improve their and their families' lives. This recent meeting by education stakeholders discussed ways to help improve the campus's safety without having to deploy metal detectors and banning cell phones. Quote, imagine how much time it would take to wand over 1,000 students, and who would check if the wand detected something around the private areas of a student? Not to mention all the metal in a normal wardrobe and bag full of school supplies. Access to the school would also have to be limited to a few areas, depending on the personnel available. End quote. Gary Cooper, president of the parent-teacher organization at Benevente Middle School, remarked. The discussion then led to a reform school for students who have repeatedly violated school policy. This idea needs to move forward as soon as possible. The Guam Education Board, senators, and Governor Lou Leon Guerrero must be proactive and work together to advance this idea and make it a reality as soon as possible. The safety of most students is at stake. That's the editorial from the Guam Daily Post today on page 18. Reform School Will Help Keep Students Safe. And I was, let's see if there's anybody on the phone itching to get in here or on Facebook. Let's see, click, and see if there's any comments on this. I would bring yours in first, but these were my kind of, well, this is what I was thinking about when I read this. Safety is an everyday, all-student concern, not most students. The last line is, the safety of most students is at stake. No, safety is an everyday and all students concern, not most students. Even those who are prone to violence need to be supervised and kept from harm. removing repeat troublemakers to a school environment where more intense scrutiny is a good idea. But in-school prevention, active reporting, and adult response is the key to real safety. And that happens anyway and should be happening anyway. Reform school is a good idea, or whatever you want to call it. A school for, they had another name for it, so it didn't have the stigma of reform schools from the 1950s and 60s that were basically DYA with a school. And maybe that's the solution. You have lawbreakers who are breaking the law that if they were adults, they would be charged with criminal activity. But these are activities going on school grounds, but they have nothing to do with school, whether it's violence or open container laws or drunk in public or regular laws. And so, as you've heard me mention, it's a matter of citizenship. It's a matter of students standing up for order within their own school grounds, and to have competent adult response. It might be a good idea is to make sure that in every classroom there is a line that is monitored in the office where you can text and say, I'm in room, and of course everyone would have to be signed in as themselves. I'm in room 18C, and there's a student named so-and-so. I see that he's drinking alcohol. Then they just quietly come and pick him up and take him down to the office. It could be anonymous, but of course it's known at the school center. And that way the students can work with the administrators to weed out people who are breaking the rules, including bringing pot to school. You're not there to play, you're there to study and to learn. So I'm not too partial to rewarding the Guam Daily Post for their editorial today. It's a good idea. Reform school is a good idea, but the editorial needs to be more pointed in that respect. On yesterday, Pacific Sunday News put out an opinion called "Still Up in Smoke: Enforce Guam's Vaping Rules Regulations." Now, I'm not going to read this out because it's just there's too much in this that kind of goes around the subject before it gets down to it. The key of this is, unfortunately, enforcement of laws and regulations always has been a major weakness for the government of Guam. There is a lack of inspectors to ensure public health codes are met. And then it finishes up, lawmakers can pass new laws and impose stricter regulations, fines, and fees all they want. But until they take real, significant, and lasting steps to reduce the cost of government, to free up funds for enforcement, any additional measures would be pointless. Well, in fact, if you reduce the cost of government, you would have to re-increase it to have more enforcement. So it's a matter of prioritizing, and I kind of wish the editorial writers would be more precise, because it's not about reducing cost, it's about prioritizing. It may be reducing cost, but when you're talking about adding more people to do enforcement in one area, it's and they're talking about our community already has regulations pertaining to vaping and sales of vaping products, and then they're not enforcing the law. So I'm just going to leave that alone. It's poorly written, and there's no discussion of the number of public health inspector full-time equivalent positions that have to be created and qualified staffed with qualified persons. in order to enforce Guam's own laws and regulations on vaping, as opposed to cigarette sales, which is a tax matter. And even in that area, they're not enforcing. So they sort of missed a real golden opportunity to tie together enforcement in one area where there isn't enforcement in a very closely related other area. So, but they're right about it takes the government of Guam, if it's going to pass a law on regulations, that includes regulations, then it should have the means in the budget to enforce them. If they don't, then they've only done half the work. Let's go to line 1. I see Joe is on line 1. Welcome to Tall Tales this afternoon, Joe.
Hey, Daryl. So, did you say that the vaping was in PDN or over the Post?
In PDN yesterday.
Oh, because I'm looking at the Post and it's a different story. But
yeah,
interesting subject you touched on. I have to agree with you. It's a matter of prioritizing budgets and expenditures. The thing is that you start something new, a new school, right? It's simply going to become a school for bad boys, as you say, and then it becomes like I don't know if it's good compared to the prison system, where not so much rehabilitation is occurring as much as training better criminals because of the culture.
Or they're going to have to do a better job of educating in an environment where everyone is already known to be someone who doesn't want to conform with the rules of school.
They're bad boys, right?
Yeah, if they want an education, that's where they can get it. So it'll be more intensive as far as small class size.
I agree. You leave them in the public schools and just identify, what the issues are. What surprised me is for whatever reason they're not. I don't know. You call it thinking out of the box. I mean, for example, don't they have dogs or specialized tech that can snuff out different types of alcohol? Specifically, I don't know.
They didn't bring up those ideas. They only brought up wands, which are, what they usually, in the news, right? They've been checking for weapons. And so then they're talking about checking for, using wands in a school where they're not checking for weapons, they're checking for liquids. But then about how many years ago, 10 years ago, they said, let's all use clear backpacks. And then no outside drinks, or any drinks that were in the backpacks had to be visible, and then they would, and that was up
here again,
at Sanchez.
It feels like a liberal theme again because they're not identifying that a lot of studies point that if you don't have a two-parent household, whatever the two parents are, whether it be male, female, whatever, just as long as there's two parents in the house, that usually that's where there's dysfunctional adapting to society. So in some cases, well, especially in the African American community, they identified their lack of a father in the household. But I would say as long as there's two parents, whatever their background affiliation is, so more than one person.
So two women parents or two men parents?
I'm not, that I don't. For me,
I'm not putting words in your mouth, but
I don't care as long as to me it's a group effort, it's a team effort. There's no way one person. You just look at a classroom, one teacher for 20, 30 students. It's almost impossible. So you can have a family of 2 to 4. You should have at least 2 parents. Just as a standard of study of some sort, because one person, one adult needs to be around if the other isn't, or one adult is asleep, to help each other out, especially with little babies. And so I'm just saying, there's all sorts of ways of looking at it. But the other thing is they're not looking at the background of the kids who are drinking alcohol. Are they from Guam? Are they new arrivals from some other country? Is that taboo to talk about? You know what I'm saying?
Well, we aren't given much information about the identity of the students, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Normally, there is no requirement to identify minors for any kind of infraction, and that's known to the authorities and to the school officials, but not the public doesn't have a right to know that information. And second it doesn't. If there's a trend, there's only 10 students, 12 students involved out of how many thousand? 10,000 high school students and junior high. So it's not like it's a trend. It's not really even something that's so out of the ordinary. There were two riots in the space of a week, but we're not having a riot every week.
I mean, if it's fortunate enough to say, hey, we need a reform school, then what you can say we need a reform school, but you can't say, what their background is. Do they have a one parent household, single mom, single dad?
Not for us, not for the public, not for the public. And we used to have. It's not a public. No, it's DOE has to handle this, not the public. The public, and then the legislature doesn't have to pass a law about it. It's the DOE. In fact, the DOE used to have a school for students who were struggling to keep their mind on their studies because they were discipline problems. And so they removed them from the high schools and they sent them up to J.P. Torres. No, J.P. Torres. And then they closed it down. And now they're wondering about what they're going to do to respond to the increase in violence in the schools when they don't have an alternate school to send these students to.
Yeah, ultimately, the public ends up paying for it.
Yes.
Whatever they spend money on is the public, and the way it happens is that the government decides what they can afford and what they can't. Well, we have to do this, so they take out a loan, and the debt goes to us and our future generations to pay off if it's such a large debt, and which it's if you're talking about millions, possibly tens of millions of dollars. So it's these leaders who are suggesting reform schools and the importance of it, because the causation being riots and speaking alcohol in the school. So if you're really doing your homework, I think it's and there's something stopping the parents themselves from saying, hey, do you know who these kids are? The kids are going to know who the kids are going to know who their classmates are, and it's just a matter of time and say, oh yeah, it's that class. Then you got a list of 10 kids and you say, who are they? Where are they from? It's not rocket science.
No, but it's not. Yes, but it's not for us, the public, to figure out. It's for the school authorities to figure out. And if they need to open up an alternate school 2 years after they closed it, then maybe they should not have closed it.
So what we're going to do is we're going to say it's more important to spend tens of millions of dollars than to figure out if these kids are troubled because they're coming from a broken house or because they're new arrivals from another country.
No, because you can't categorize them that way. They have broken the laws or broken rules, and that's how they've come to official attention.
So it's not constitutional, is what you're saying. To identify.
No, it's not even a trend. It's just individuals who are acting up. It's not a racial or a socioeconomic characteristic. That you have to watch a whole population because they're prone to be this way. We're not looking at that. We're looking at people who are individuals who are acting out in a way that if they were adults, it would be criminal. But because they're minors, they are protected.
This is the PDN, right?
It's a what?
This was the PDN editorial.
Oh, the editorial was PDN. Yes. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Post today, Reform School.
Okay, so here's the thing. Right? The Post yesterday, Sunday, put out this, we all have to do our part to make regional migrants feel welcome. So here it is. This is an ethnic background thing. When you say regional, unless there's some other meaning to it, it's like, okay, so because people live nearby, we have to do our part. And then so the question is, who's judging that we haven't? And then these migrants, if they're coming from another jurisdiction, what if we have an opinion that their leaders are not being very nice to us? And our elders, we don't have a seat at the table. We can't We cannot figure out whether we have fair trade, whether there's a level playing field, whether and they've been playing this game for 30 plus years.
Yes.
Literally thousands of migrants, and by our laws, we're hamstrung because by law, every kid that arrives on our soil is entitled to an education. Another thing that Bob brings up of fair education.
Yes.
And so, and guess who that comes out of? Our pockets. Whoever, especially people who are more permanent residents here, who want to make this a more permanent residence, because if it's such a large debt, which, man, it's already in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
But you know what? It's and also those numbers have not been honored. Those numbers have not been honored over the years by the federal government because they've been counted wrong. I was in there watching them count those numbers, and it doesn't take into account.
We're paying for it. We're paying.
It doesn't. No, the numbers are inflated. The amount of money for the impact was inflated, which is why the federal government never had to really take us seriously.
No, but what I'm saying is the debt for the schools, the debt for all the services that for new arrivals, that's all on writing, in paper, in accounting, and that's debts that we're paying in real time, and in the future we're going to pay for it. Our kids are going to pay for it. Our grandkids, whatever debt remains, if we don't pay for it right away, we got 1.8 billion territorial debt, and they've been doing this for 30 years. We don't have a seat at the table yet. So I would say that if anything, in their authority say you should treat our elders nice. You're not treating us and our elders very nice. You're not
Joe,
making us feel.
you know, I know, but you're mixing several issues that in themselves are each really complex and have been well, they've been they have also been they've also been made even more complicated through the active judicious use of rhetoric and grandstanding and politicking and posturing, and so we're kind of tainted with that. Joe, thank you very much for the call. Yep, I got to take a break here and got two more calls on hold, but thank you so much for the call this afternoon, Joe. That was Joe. We'll be back in just a few more minutes to take our next two callers after these messages.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
It's a one-of-a-kind wine fundraiser. Guahan Sustainable Culture presents Wine in the Garden. The Hamamoto Gardens help support food sovereignty, security, and sustainability while sipping wines from around the world, surrounded by 50-some acres of beautiful farm and garden. Tickets are $75 each. Proceeds support education and outreach on how important, easy, and fun sustainable practices can be. Wine in the Garden is on Saturday evening, October 26th, starting at 5. For more details, go to our website, gusustainable.org, or call 687-6491.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
Well, welcome back to Tall Tales. I am Daryl Taggarty, and we've kind of gotten through our Zami Ikatni, and we're taking some calls now. Already heard from Joe, and I've got next Tom on the line. Good afternoon, Tom.
Good afternoon, sir.
How are you doing?
All right.
Are you getting a tan? You are getting a tan today? Or are you already tan?
Oh, I'm doing all right.
Oh, okay.
Do you hear an echo?
No.
I think I do.
You have an echo? Maybe it's your radio.
Yeah. Something's wrong with my cell phone. Anyway, I do not want an alternative school to be open again for those problem kids that are constantly creating problems, rioting in the schools and all that. Let the parents pay for their education by sending them to a private school. It is because it is the parents' fault for not disciplining those kids. So let them now pay a tuition to send them to a private school.
You know
what I'm saying?
Well, I think
it is a way of getting back at the parents for failing to be a good parent to discipline those kids. So now they have to pay. Let's kick them out of the public school and let the parents pay a tuition to send them to private school.
Then we're going to be throwing the parents in jail for not sending the kids if they can't afford it, and then we're going to put the kids on foster homes, and it just snowballs. The Guam legislature, didn't they just pass a law requiring that the school system keep the kids in school until 18 it's not to 16, it's up to 18 now, isn't it? They raised the age.
You do have a good point there, Daryl, but what can we do?
But we made it mandatory.
Bad apples. If we keep those bad apples in the same bushel with the good apples, it's going to create the other good apples to also be bad.
That's right. That's right. And also we have to make sure the good apples, make sure that the good apples are part of the system to keep their community clean. And so instead of the hand-wringing over what are we going to do with these students and trying to set up brand new school for them or go back to the old school. I don't know why they stopped the alternative school unless they didn't have, I don't know, what was the reason why they closed the alternative school? You know, they decided to
using any more of our tax money to produce a school for these problem kids when they could have been disciplined at home by their parents. That's my basic idea.
Yeah.
I just don't want to be spending any more of our tax money. We got better use of our tax money, like fixing our hospital, than producing an alternative school for these kids.
Well, let me ask you, Tom.
Been disciplined at home to begin with.
Yeah, let me ask you something, Tom. Because there's another calculation that is usually applied in these particular kinds of cases, and that is if we know this is a minor and we can reach the minor now, then if we spend a little bit now, is it not better than just declaring him to be criminal as a minor and cut him off from school and then just let him continue through life? Which one is more cost effective? Addressing it now or addressing it later? That's the different and there's people who run those calculations, and they find it's a lot more expensive to not try a little harder now. Now, I hate to sound like I want to just throw money at every problem, but I'd rather throw it at this point where it's only a small amount versus the construction of a dedicated cell for this person for 30 years. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I know you have a very good point about the thing is, right now our hospital is struggling so bad. I want to prioritize things first.
Oh, yes, I know. Maybe we should put 5 or 6 administrators in a couple of those hospital beds and strap them down and see how they like it. And see how we like it. See if it improves things. You know?
What? Yeah.
It's just that's a management problem, and we're paying them better than $100,000 each to figure it out. Now, if you want to save some money, that's a good place to start. You know,
I think
take a few heads off, and then or fire a couple, and say, well, if the rest of you that are left don't produce, I'll fire the rest of you too, and let's see how quickly we can get some things turned around.
I think the final solution to all of this is let's just go out there and start enforcing our laws. We gotta kick some rear ends of those lawmakers that make laws, but yet they don't give enough help to the police department to enforce the laws.
Oh, we're going to get around to that subject. Isn't that one of the subjects I've got today about the overtime for the police? Well, that was an interesting.
You know, these kids are constantly cutting from school. They're drunk, right? They get alcohol, and they're not supposed to.
Right.
Look what's happening now with the marijuana issue in the middle school.
hang on. Let's go back.
Lawmakers are so quick to make laws, but yet they don't know how to enforce it.
Tom,
Yeah.
marijuana is decriminalized. So who do you think is going to have it? Like everyone. And then you're going to hold it against middle schoolers for having it? Besides, before that, they already had it. B, when minors have alcohol, and then they want to be a big shot by showing how they can get away with it by drinking in school, how about you find out who they got the alcohol from, and then you whack them, because it's adults enabling the minors, and then you have contributing to the delinquency of a minor. You blame the adults for giving or providing access to the underage, whether it's a parent or another adult relative or an adult over 21 friend or an owner of a store, a mom and pop store, who doesn't mind just taking the money and slipping it in the bag and letting them go out the door with it. But somebody, adult, can be held criminally responsible, and then you whack them, and then it sends a message. But we don't see that kind of enforcement. The minors are protected because even they do something wrong, that whatever record they have is going to be just sealed up when they turn 18. But then after 18, if they go into a life of crime, well, sorry, we already, it says here that you've already been warned when you were a minor. And so these things come into play, but it's not as much a public issue, except, and you're right, the enforcement has to be done, but we don't have enough enforcement. And that's that goes back to that article that, maybe I should pull that one out about the cuts in overtime harm the community and break the law. It's on page 1 of today's Post. And it's interesting, but this thing has been going on for years and years and years.
Yeah, that's basically the moral of my story, is that our lawmakers are so quick to make a law, but yet they don't know how to enforce it.
Oh, they're supposed to be, you might have heard this before. They haven't been flagging this very much recently, but before a law was passed, it had to have a fiscal note. A fiscal note is what would be the cost of enforcing this law? How many law enforcement personnel or regulatory officers or inspectors or equipment, technology, if you pass this law, what will it require us to do? And they usually say, no, we just want to make a statement that this is what we should be doing. And so it's ineffective. Or it kind of points the way, but it doesn't require the executive branch to do anything. But when you do something like decide on making 24 miles of new road or widening 24 miles of road, you already have in the engineering how much it's going to cost to build the road. But you should also know how much will it cost to maintain those 24 miles.
I encourage you to read Lee Weber's article on the Post today.
Oh, I saw it. I was wondering. He's saying so much about the things I've been saying. But you know what? He was on the hospital board. But he's not saying anything about the hospital. But he was on the hospital board. He was involved in a tiff, and he resigned over it, and he kept his mouth shut. Now, if I was looking at that article really carefully, and I'm glad. I agree with everything he's saying, but I think he's more agreeing with what I'm saying. And what I don't have from him is why is he not being more specific about what he knew when he was a board member at GMH? Because these chronic problems are something he should be sitting down with the chair of the committee on health and letting her know what to look for, and let her staff go there and dig through and find the documents that shows just what is going on along the lines of the problem. Because as long as people are going to turn and look the other way, and I'm not talking about the general public. I'm talking, general public not keeping their elected leaders feet to the fire to get this work done. But if there are appointees and directors, to the boards and to the administrative positions, when there is serious wrongdoing, if they're not going to reveal the problems so that they can be solved, they are part of the problem. And that was what I was looking at when I saw Lee Weber's column today. Now, I like Lee, but I think Lee could do more. I think he can do a lot more.
You have a caller waiting, so I'll talk to you later. All right, buddy?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tom. Good to hear from you today. Okay. And that was Tom, regular Tom, our regular Tom. There are several Toms, but I like hearing from Tom. And I do have a call. Another call. Francis is on line 3. Francis, welcome to Tall Tales. How was your weekend?
Thank you, Daryl.
Yeah. What's on your mind today?
I was listening to the conversation before, Tom,
Mm-hmm.
and you mentioned something about all costs associated with Compact Impact was submitted in or was exaggerated.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, Mary Joseph, man, who did this? Who did the submission and the calculation and all that?
It's going back to the very beginning of the. It's going back to the very beginning of Compact Impact, since the concept was brought up, and then basically the U.S. said, "Oh, just tell us what your costs are," and what the U.S. should have said was, "We will work with you to develop a reporting form that meets our requirements." And we'll have you so that you can accurately study the impact. But they left it open-ended. And what our government officials did was they said, "Oh, this sounds like a blank check. Let's just throw everything in there, and we'll negotiate it down." Well, that doesn't work, because you have, for example, you have migrants coming in, and then while they're here, they're giving birth, and then 5 years later, the kids are starting to go to school, the ones who are born here. But they have the same last name, and they're from a migrant family. That's not migrant impact if the child was born in Guam. That child is born in Guam, and it's not a migrant impact. and if you don't separate the stuff out, then you can't submit the bill to the U.S. government. What about the billing fiasco up at GMH? They're saying everybody with a Micronesian surname coming into there is owes all this money as self-pay, and they're not paying. But they're not. They can't even get the people who are here on Guam who are not part of the immigrant community to pay self-pay, because the bills are so messed up that you can't go in there and say, was this bill were these items really billed to my case, to my medical case? They can't tell you. And so if it's not auditable, they should not have put it in. And I've learned this a long, long time ago. And the local government, the government of Guam, walked into this trap. And the federal government's gotten away with it for years and years and years. And even now, even after Congress passed a law saying that the U.S. government will come up with a scheme to help the governments, not just of Guam but also Hawaii and other states, come up with a reporting scheme, they haven't really done it. And so even now, it's like 5 years, and they haven't really done it. They haven't done one that would satisfy the government's own, the U.S. government's own standards for making a claim. And so we should just go back and use the regular claim procedures that are well known in the federal government, and document exactly that way. But you'd have to have very good audit-ready records on the expenses. So you'd have to have, in particular, the names and the birth dates and the place of birth and all the information that's needed for each case, for each dollar amount. And you can do it. It's almost like, you remember when before they would have the what's the impact of the federally connected students in the schools. And so everyone would take this everyone would fill out a form and turn it back in, and then the Department of Education downtown would compile the information, and they would use it as a basis for the making a claim to the federal government for how much aid they should get. And that was to support the schools based on the number of students in the schools whose parents were working on base, or parents were members of the military, or the parents were working in a federal job.
Man, I feel like we got screwed here somewhere by our own people, man.
We are. It's laziness. It's mediocrity. In the government, when you go to the government, the positions in the government of Guam, there are positions that have this requirement to do this kind of work in the job description. But if the supervisor doesn't prioritize it, doesn't require the employee to do that job accurately, then what we turn into the U.S. government is junk. And then we don't get money. They just kind of toss us something and say, you're going to have to deal with that because you haven't really made the case. So
let me get back to you after your break. Maybe I can apply my GED postgraduate degree from the FCI, okay?
Okay, so hang on and we'll take this break and we'll come right back to you, Francis.
All right.
Okay, and let's take it away, Joe, and we'll come right back with Francis.
We can't buy this house.
What?
It has 4 bathrooms. Just think of all the bathtub rings, water spots, and stains, plus the cleaning products I'll have to buy.
Didn't I tell you? The house comes with a non-electric Connecticut water treatment system. We'll have clean, soft water throughout the house, protect the water-using appliances, keep the tub, showers, and sinks looking like new, and help our skin, hair, and clothes look and feel great, too. The house even includes a Connecticut drinking water system.
A Connecticut system in the house? We'll take it.
American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mescla. Try their featured special for October, Taiwan-style beef noodle soup. Beef shank and tendon slowly simmered in a rich Taiwanese-style soy-based broth. Served over noodles with bok choy and cilantro. Available in Agotnya and in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
And we're back with Tall Tales. Thank you very much, Real Joe, for the break. Francis, you're still there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let me see. There's something that I can't see. There's something here I want. Oh, I've got Margaret Bloss on Facebook, and she says, Hafide, Daryl, and team. I totally agree with you that the adults should be held responsible for the minors' actions. Good guidance starts at home and with the adults. Too many pariahs in the system for the governor, from the governor to the lawmakers to the directors. And she would know. She has good experience too from her angle. She knows, even though she's enjoying the air and climate of the States right now. She knows.
She's been there.
Yeah, she's been there. And so many people here do know what needs to be done.
Exactly. And you were there too, and you and Tom were talking about discipline, right? Disciplinary actions and stuff like board policy with the troubled kids.
Yeah.
I was wondering, Darryl, if you have any recollection of the some of the programs that are initiated. Which one was the alternative sentencing program? Do you remember something?
Well, alternative sentencing, it has to do with going through the system. But this is for adults. Alternative sentencing is for adults. For minors, it would be, the system that would take a child and remove them from the home and put them in DYA. And then also, if it's in the school, it's another part of the punishment is not to go through any judicial process, but to go through just the school's own process.
Darryl, there were so many boys and girls, middle school that have to go through. Yes, they went through the system, but there was an alternative sentencing program in the middle school and in the middle school where they were more like counsel, and educated on what was really going on, and they had to speak out about their parents too. Many parents didn't really weren't capable of intellectually capable of guiding their kids,
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was the kids were being educated in school about what was going on with their academics and all the going on at home, where there were so many cases, and I had a whole bunch of them, and when I talked to them, I'm not a teacher, but when I talked to them, I was at peace with them, They were talking to me, and sometimes we get on the board and I start to teach them the metric system and all that,
Mm-hmm.
And no one has ever, done that. And
No,
all the basic little things, that they needed, the necessities they couldn't comprehend.
And sometimes they were coming into the system and they were concerned about things going on to the left and right. They weren't looking straight ahead. And they're distracted by one, and then they would lose the lesson and they would fall behind. And they know. They're frustrated because they know. They're comparing themselves with their peers. And so how are they going to cope with that if they're falling behind and it's getting hopeless? Or it's getting frustrating, or it's getting non-productive to even be there in school. And that's why I think they started the alternative school up at J.P. Torres. So they took one school that didn't have enough population to have a whole freestanding school, and they identified that location where students who were removed from the schools because of discipline problems would report to that school, where they would be more of an intensive education, but also less opportunity for them to act out, and more of an opportunity for counseling and remediation, and also some social work to find out if there was something going on at home or in their living conditions that was contributing to them going towards a life of non-productive or antisocial behavior, where to try to get them back on a track where they can do well for themselves, and despite those kinds of problems, or to get assistance with those problems.
Daryl, man, you're absolutely right.
But they closed that school a couple of years ago.
Oh, you were?
No, DOE closed that school.
Okay.
They closed it, I think, 2 years ago, and now they're trying to figure out what to do, because they mainstreamed all those students back into the main schools and no place to put them.
Daryl, you're absolutely right, brother. That is what you and me and everybody else was working on, and we were starting to see a lot of progress.
Yes, the progress has to be individual, because these are individual students. They're minors, and they're acting out in an antisocial way. And you can identify them, but if you suspend them or expel them, you're suspending or expelling them to nowhere. Now, man, we have solutions, and then the solution is gone, and then they wonder why we have problems.
I think it's time to start thinking about maybe if their kids are in the system, maybe we should come up with something. An alternative, maybe an hour education for the parents, like once a week, like that.
I think there's so many. I think we've got all the solutions in front of us. We just don't have people implementing them.
Nobody's listening to you and me, Daryl, man.
They're listening. They're listening. We just need to see some action. Francis, thank you very much for the call today.
You're welcome now.
Okay. We'll see you soon. Okay, it's 4:59 and time to take our halftime break. And after the Fox News and our halftime show, we'll be back with more Tall Tales.
The Point is KUSG. Hagatna, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A tornado touchdown in Texas. I'm Richard Jordan. Fox News, the twister striking near Love Field Airport in Dallas.
But there is damage, a lot of parts in North Dallas. A lot of neighbors are right now going door to door to check on their neighbors. So far in this area, in this neighborhood, no reported injuries, but we're still trying to check to see the damage in this area.
Reporter Stephen Dial from Dallas Fox affiliate KDFW. The severe weather knocking power out to more than 112,000 customers in North Texas. Defense Secretary Mark Esper says U.S. troops leaving Syria will go to western Iraq and will continue to conduct operations against ISIS to prevent its resurgence.
The current game plan is for those forces to reposition into western Iraq, the ones coming out, right? That original 1,000, and then to two missions. One is to help defend Iraq, and two is to perform a counter-ISIS mission as we sort through the next steps.
President Trump receiving criticism from both Democrats and Republicans for withdrawing the troops and deserting Kurdish fighters who fought alongside the U.S. to defeat ISIS. A small plane coming in for a landing vanished. Officials at Raleigh-Durham International Airport in North Carolina say air traffic control lost radar contact with the plane as it approached a runway.
A small general aviation aircraft approaching the airport was lost on radar somewhere in the vicinity of Unsaid State Park. RDU operations and firefighting units immediately responded, which closed the airport for a brief period of time.
Emergency responders are searching the park by helicopter for any sign of the missing Piper PA-32. No word on how many people may have been on board. No school today for more than 300,000 public school students in Chicago. Contract talks between the teachers union and the district continue. The teachers are demanding smaller class sizes. America's listening to Fox News.
Chili's Grill and Bar is now open at the second floor of the Two-Mont Sands Plaza.
Hi, welcome to Chili's.
Come and see what the buzz is all about. Grab your friends and savor their sizzling fajitas, big mouth burgers, and fall off the bone smoked ribs while sipping on their world-famous Presidente margaritas. Treat yourself to an elevated experience at Chili's and feel why they're like no place else. Now open on the second floor of Two-Mont Sands Plaza. Together, we Chili's.
Connecticut water treatment customers don't keep coming back. They're satisfied the first time. That's right. Connecticut non-electric water treatment systems take care of your water problems, and you won't need to keep calling us for repairs. Join the list of satisfied Connecticut customers who purchased their non-electric water systems years ago and are still enjoying clean, conditioned water without any hassles from timers or circuit boards.
American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
A former football star is in the right place at the right time.
A video released Friday showing part of a successful effort by a former University of Oregon football star to disarm a student who brought a shotgun to a Portland high school. That video showing Keenan Lowe and the student emerging from a classroom and into a hallway at Parkrose High School with Lowe holding onto that shotgun. Lowe saying he lunged at the armed student back on May 17th while other students ran screaming out a back door. Lowe works as a coach and security guard at the school. The 19-year-old suspect, Angel Granados Diaz, pleading guilty to possessing a firearm in a public building. Paul Stevens, Fox News.
An NFL linebacker faces charges after an altercation with his girlfriend. Pittsburgh Steelers' Anthony Chiquillo is charged with simple assault, property damage, and harassment. The 26-year-old is out on bond. A spokesman for the Steelers says the team is aware of the incident and is gathering information. The first Chick-fil-A in the UK will soon shut down after opening just days ago.
The popular American food chain made its debut in Reading, about an hour and a half from London. But on Saturday, it wasn't people looking for a chicken sandwich who gathered outside the restaurant. It was protesters. One held a sign that read, "Get the chick out, say no to bigotry and hatred on your high street." Gay activists say they protested the restaurant because the chain contributes millions to anti-LGBTQ groups. So far, no comment from Chick-fil-A. Marcus White, Fox News.
The battle of the villains at the box office, and Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, knocked Joker out of the #1 spot.
Philip asked me to marry him. No, I wasn't really asking. Nor was I.
The Angelina Jolie film grossed $36 million in North America in its first weekend. Joker added $29 million in its third weekend. Zombieland Double Tap, The Addams Family, and Gemini Man round out the top 5. I'm Richard Jordan, and this is Fox News.
Hulu is all your TV in one place, plus more. Watch thousands of hit shows, movies, and award-winning Hulu originals for only $5.99 per month. It's TV without the cable contract and the freedom of on-demand streaming. Get current network shows from ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, and binge-watch every season of your favorite cable shows. Premium Hulu viewing is brought to you by Proline Automotive and AB Sports, Guam's store for Nike. To advertise on Hulu, call Choice Digital at 989-0042.
It's a one-of-a-kind wine fundraiser. Guahan Sustainable Culture presents Wine in the Garden. The Hamamoto Gardens help support food sovereignty, security, and sustainability while sipping wines from around the world, surrounded by 50-some acres of beautiful farm and garden. Tickets are $75 each. Proceeds support education and outreach on how important, easy, and fun sustainable practices can be. Wine in the Garden is on Saturday evening, October 26, starting at 5. For more details, go to our website, gusustainable.org, or call 687-6491.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
A short break. Welcome back to Tall Tales. I'm Daryl Taggarty. I'm your host here on weekday afternoons while we all wait for the return of Bob Klitzkie, who will be back before Thanksgiving. Thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon. And if you're wondering just what might be going on in this next hour, from now till 6 o'clock, I'm going to try to focus on self-determination, political status, questions. But first, we're going to take a look at this article from the Guam Daily Post about cops, cuts in overtime harm community and break the law. It was a page one story in today's Guam Daily Post. I'm not going to read the whole article to you. I'm not going to read it to you. But I do think you should take a look at it. It's very interesting because we've been going through years and years of using overtime to hold FTEs open. A lot of FTEs were vacated because of deployments. Yeah, the people who are interested in becoming police in this community are also many of the same people who are interested in serving their country as part of the National Guard. And so we have this kind of an overlap, which is good, and we have a law that says that we'll hold those jobs open, and so we have this big overtime bill. But this is where the problem lies, and it's not a problem with overtime. You know, we don't begrudge the overtime, and it's not begrudging the time that's put in by the police. It's a management issue. First off, they're not recruiting enough new people to go in, you know, to keep up with the attrition of those who are coming out of the police force or who are deploying, and then we don't have enough on the street. The problem is they're not recruiting enough, and they're paying overtime to some and not to others. Some are getting the overtime, and over the years, you've seen those stories in the past about the executive security detail at Adelup and Government House. And it's not like they didn't do the hours. They are doing the hours, but lots of overtime going to a few people. And it's a lack of manpower planning and the discretionary use of the funds. There's money appropriated for full-time positions, but then those positions are not filled, and they're used for the overtime. There's higher pay for some, and then there's some disparity in how the money is given out to the favorites. And when you read the article, and you read between the lines, because the police are not going to say somebody else in particular is getting the overtime and I'm not. They're just saying, I'm not getting paid. I'm told that I have to be on running time, but you know that there are other people who are getting paid because it's coming out in every now and then in press stories. And this started bubbling out. That's what's in the article today. And then the management is responsible for the morale of the rank and file in the police department. They're responsible for the resources that are given to them, budgeted at year to year by the legislature, and they're responsible for addressing evolving community policing needs. So where are our needs? And then they have to pay for specialized skills that are being developed by certain officers who are receiving training and returning from education in particular areas of police work. And also, the management has to be in charge of just the general needs of policing manpower. How many skilled, well-rested, well-equipped officers are available during any shift? And this is the measure of management and leadership. That is what we look for in a police chief. That is what the governor looks for in selecting a police chief. And that's the real story behind the story that's in the Post today on page 1. Cuts in overtime harm the community, break the law. Go back and take a look at that article after having heard what I was just saying about it, and reread the story, and just think about how that all works out. I've got Carl on one line, and I have Ken on the other. We're going to talk about his article on Guam just isn't ready for self-determination. But first, we're going to talk to Carl. Carl, you're on line 1, and welcome to today's edition of Tall Tales.
Hey, Daryl. Thank you. I was listening as I was driving around getting things done. You were talking about the schools and school problems. I'd like to ask if we could backtrack just a little bit and talk about that.
Sure.
Because I have a friend that taught all last year at Benavente Middle School, and he told me behind the scenes what is going on and the chaos from his corner of the school anyway. I'm sure it isn't all chaos everywhere, but there's some serious problems. I remember many, many years ago I watched a movie, and you probably have seen it and you might remember it, titled Lean on Me about Principal Joe Clark.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, he came into an inner city school as the new principal, and it was gang-ridden. It was just riddled with graffiti. There was just chaos in the hallways, kids getting bullied and picked on and beaten up, drug sales. I mean, it was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And he famously imposed discipline on the school, and it became a much different environment. Kids who were from these inner city neighborhoods who were coming there to try to find a chance to get out of this cycle of poverty and drugs and violence finally had a chance. And another example I've seen, which I brought up I think in one of my past calls, is about a place called Boys Latin, which is a charter school.
Right.
It's extremely disciplined. They do not allow kids to go around, with their shirts untucked. They wear suits. They wear ties. They wear jackets. It's a uniform school. They impose strict discipline. They impose high standards. And this is in an inner city school. And the kids are extremely well-mannered and disciplined, very intelligent. It's just a remarkable school. If you go to YouTube, you can look up, type in Boys Latin Charter School, and you'll see some of the videos about that remarkable school. And I believe our local schools, unfortunately, have given in to this idea of letting the inmates run the asylum. And my friend told me about kids actually getting in his face and telling him if he caused them any problems, they would report him to the principal. So this guy, who is the teacher, supposedly the authority figure, had his hands tied because there was no support at the front end, at the main office, and he was having to deal with these serious discipline problems. And from his feedback, there's just a tremendous amount of breakdown of discipline and standards in some of the schools. I'm sure some are better than others. There are stricter principals. But if there's no discipline coming from the top, it filters down to the bottom, and pretty soon you have this chaos in the hallways. And he told me about gangs and their having their way in the hallways, vaping in the hallways, which is a no-no. But he would see thick clouds of vapor in the hallways. Just all kinds of cursing and bad language everywhere. I mean, it's just it's like some of the public schools have completely lost discipline and standards and control.
Yeah, and they are not asserting control effectively for the students and for themselves, because it has to be to benefit the students, because then by that way you isolate the troublemakers. If you can produce, or if you can work on producing a higher standard for everyone, you would isolate the troublemakers. It's not going to be fun for them to be disrupting.
Well, the idea is,
but they're not doing it.
Has filtered down is this idea of high self-esteem, but that is not the problem. A lot of these kids have super high self-esteem. They feel like they're 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and that is not the issue. Americans, especially since this self-esteem mania has caught on, the kids have a huge self-esteem. I saw a study that was done one time of kids that were taking these, that had taken tests related to STEM scores, and Americans were way down the list. I think they were number 26 or 27.
Mm-hmm.
But the odd thing is the American students had the highest opinion of where they were on the list. They felt like they were really doing fantastic. And all the, the others at the top, they didn't have such a high opinion. They were, kind of just working really hard, and they felt they weren't good enough, and they always had to improve. But the American students just felt like they were doing fantastic, even if they were doing just terrible. So this self-esteem movement, I think, has done tremendous damage to students' ability to keep pace with growing and improving their abilities, in STEM subjects and, the basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic. They're constantly told that they're fantastic and everything's wonderful, and to a certain point, I guess that's kind of okay, but it just gets taken so far that pretty soon they just think, if I'm so great, why do I need to give out any effort? I'm already fantastic.
Oh, yeah. I'm not quite sure how they're going to deal with it. How they're going to continue to say that either the schools are doing well, and it's only a few that they need to address, or the system is just pretty well. It's optimized for what we are equipped to handle, and it's not for you and I and the public to delve into. This is something that the parents and the the teachers and the school administrators are supposed to be sitting down and addressing as their own community to improve the learning environment in the schools. And then that whatever pressure the parents of the student body can bring to the Department of Education to I'm not going to say resources in the dollar sense, but resources in the skills sense to bring those to bear at those schools where they have problems, especially problems that if they don't address them now are going to become worse when the students get into high school. I'm not claiming to have any specialized knowledge on this, but we do have people who are highly paid, and we have a bunch of them, and they should have a handle on it, or they should be gotten out of the way, so we can hire people, take that competitive wage, and go hire people who do know what to do and can make the system work for the benefit of the students.
Yeah,
I don't send my I didn't send my two sons to public middle school because I didn't have faith in them in the public middle schools to maintain order, so that my two sons can get an education without having to deal with all the extraneous non-education related activities in the school, whether it was interpersonal or bullying or well, it's interpersonal, right? Especially middle school. I just didn't have confidence in the schools, and that was after listening to the stories from teachers saying I don't have I can't keep a handle on things just within my own sphere of influence because I'm not backed up by the principal and by the counselors. They aren't removing these kids from my room and from the halls and from the school until they are brought around to being more social. And so we can't create a school system, a school environment where the rest of the students can get serious. And so...
Yeah. To me, the answer, a big part of the answer is we need more successful charter schools like Boys Latin. I recommend anyone that's interested in that, look it up on YouTube. It's a really wonderful school, and parents can send their kids to Boys Latin. It is a boys' school, but they can send their kids there with the feeling that their kids aren't going to get jumped and beaten and maybe stabbed or shot or bullied every day, because they set high standards and they have disciplinary systems in place. Mm-hmm. And it's a place I would feel completely comfortable sending any of my kids. Fortunately, they're out of public school because I've lost confidence, But I think the answer is to have more successful charter schools. Not all charter schools are successful and work out, but those that do represent a way out for kids that are trapped in a cycle of poverty and violence and all this other stuff. It's a positive influence for the ones that do work. So I personally think that is what needs to be done. I believe public schools in many cases, not all, but too many cases, have lost control of the hallways and the classroom. And the parents and the students are paying for it. And, I think it has to stop.
Well, I wonder when it's going to be a when the charter schools are going to see this as an opportunity rather than to address the system rather than to address problems within the DOE system, to address them successfully versus simply coming up with a model where they can have their own school and it's financed by DOE. And I don't see great deal of differentiation between the charter schools and the DOE schools, except that they're privately run. But we don't see much of a difference.
Well, they have layers of bureaucratic, regulations and stuff stripped away, and they can run their operations much more efficiently and effectively without worrying, every minute of the day what the central office, would think about this, what they would say about it. They need to get approval. They have.
No, I know what the differences are, but how is it working out for students or for parents? I want to see how the charter schools are making a difference to the parents and to the students, not how it makes a difference to the administrators and teachers. I don't care about them.
I agree. The
You know?
parents and the students are really the customers, and what their customer experience is everything. I mean, the bottom line, that's all that counts. And based on my friend's comments, as I said, he taught all last year, at Beneventi. He their customer experience for the most part is not positive. It's not all bad. There are kids who are the brighter kids who are, sort of cordoned off, and they go to the better classes and they manage to do okay. But the kids who are doing average and those at the lower end that are struggling, they're really the ones that they're really having a bad time.
And those are the ones we need to be concerned with, because those are also citizens in the future, and not that far away future. And also, those are the students who are going to be going into the high schools, and if they're having trouble now, then they're going to be continuing to have trouble later on. Carl, thank you very much for your call and for extending the.
One quick positive note.
And that is?
I had my worst teacher of my life in 4th grade, and I was a terrible student, but she made me realize I was terrible. And then I had my best teacher of my life in 5th grade, Miss McLaren. She made me into an A student. And so a teacher, a very good teacher, and there are good teachers out there, kudos to them, can make a huge difference. I don't even remember what Miss McLaren did, but she turned my life around. So kudos to the good teachers out there.
Yeah, and teaching is an art, but the demands of teaching these days goes back to conforming with the system that's being implemented by the system, and so it's how well you administer the teaching, the education philosophy of the Department of Education, and it takes a lot of the art of teaching out of the classroom, and it may be part of the skill set of the teacher, but it's not valued. And this is something that I've learned through my experience at LBJ and Tamuning Elementary with my 2 boys growing up. The teachers increasingly simply administering a educational philosophy and curriculum that is heavy on feedback of metrics and not on student understanding and personalized care. And these are the students who are coming up through into the junior high now, and they'll be going into high school, and it'll be a different problem than we have today. And I don't know if it's going to the better.
That you understood that there are teachers out there that make the best of a flawed system with serious problems, and they do manage to get some very good results. They do crank out some very good kids and kids with a bright future. But the system needs to be reformed. It badly needs reform. The teachers that do succeed, they are more power to them, because I couldn't do it, frankly. I had my brief try at it, and it takes more than I've got.
Yeah, my dad was a teacher for many years, early 60s over at Tumon Junior Senior High School, and then also at JFK when it became a high school. And then later on, he went back into teaching after working for federal government, and he was a teacher at Simon Sanchez, and then with the DOD system, school system. And I run into his former students all the time, and they just loved him, and they really loved the way that he taught and the way that he treated the students, and he was a favorite. And part of it has to do with the personality and the vigor of the teacher. And so, yeah, good teachers are in themselves just gold to the students. And we want to encourage that, but you got to let the teachers teach and not just administer the lesson plans. And that's
if all it takes is one really, really good teacher to touch a kid, and they can turn his life around.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I can sense Ken is chomping at the bit, so I'll let him get on.
well, actually, we got to take our break first. But thank you very much, Carl, for the call. And then we'll take our break here, our seventh inning stretch, and we'll come back with Ken LG after this.
Join Nissan Guam on November 3rd as we try to break the Guinness World Record of 250 Nissan vehicles in a motorcade. Register now for only $10 with proceeds going to select charities and get a free World Record Driver t-shirt. Plus, be entered into our raffle giveaway for a chance to win a $1,000 travel voucher from United Airlines and more. Registration is open to the first 370 people and closes November 1st. So hurry. Register online at NissanGuam.com or visit our showroom today. No purchase necessary to enter. Raffle conditions apply. See Nissan Guam for details.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Did you ever really try to change someone's mind? It's not always an easy thing to do. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll give some tips if you're looking to bring people over to your point of view.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Smack them, not because you're slapping at a gnat, unless you're an Astro, but World Series starts next week, folks, and so don't know. I'll be getting ready to come in to do the show. I don't know how much baseball I have time to watch, but for those who can, enjoy, please. Ken, you're on the line. Are you still there?
Yes, I am.
All right. Well, you touched a funny bone here when your column was published on Saturday in the PDN on page 17, and I don't know if you wrote this headline, but the headline was, or the title of your op-ed, "Guam just isn't ready yet for self-determination." Do you really mean that?
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
Why is that?
And well, first of all, we can't even run our local government as it is. We can't run it efficiently. We can't run it effectively. And to make any effort at this juncture to become either a state or an independent nation is way, way, way premature. When the people of Guam don't trust their politicians, when people fear the government and fear its administrators and fear its officers, when the majority of the population is trapped in working poverty, and if it wasn't for $500 million in subsidies for food stamps, Section 8, and Medicaid, we're just not ready. The local politicians have not used the time wisely to develop Guam into a self-sufficient and, contrary to what the lieutenant governor and Regine and the other senators say, self-governing entity.
I thought we were going to have some kind of a debate on the air. How can we have a debate if we both agree?
Well, we agree on the premise. Where we disagree is on the process,
Well, part of
your.
Go ahead. I
was going to say, you were an advocate for a rigorous and vigorous, robust public education effort with a lot of give and take and interaction in the community.
I still am.
It didn't happen.
I still am. Yeah, it has to happen first.
Yeah,
and you're just calling a spade a spade.
Yeah, it has to happen first. But for our political officials, agents of the federal government, because they all swear to uphold the government, the laws of the United States and Guam, They do okay upholding the laws of the United States. They don't do so very good at upholding the laws of Guam. But that aside, for them to go to the United Nations and say that we are not a self-governing entity, we have no control over our government, our rules, our policies, our procedures, and our lands, is bunk. I mean, the legislature rezones more land on Guam than the Territorial Land Use Commission does. So how can a senator say we have no control over our lands? You know, how can a lieutenant governor, elected lieutenant governor, say that there is no government, no self-rule on Guam?
No, he just got elected. His job is to protect the seal. Yeah.
And we learned in the United Nations that unless Guam is decolonized, the rising oceans will overtake our island and our people and our paradise will perish.
Well, they're going to do that anyway.
Yeah, I know.
Not because we're burning fossil fuel. It's because those people over in Greenland keep lighting up candles and burning down their glaciers.
Yeah, damn them.
Yeah, you know. And what do they got? Like, you know, nuclear power or something? They're melting that stuff off with lasers or what? You know? It's
going back to Guam.
That's right. All we have control over is what we've got going here.
Yeah. We have, whether they like it or not, or are willing to admit it or not, we have self-rule here on Guam. And if they would enact a constitution, we'd have more self-rule. But they seem to have this idea that if they follow the rules and regulations and laws laid out by the U.S. Congress for the pathway to decolonization, that they would be submitting to the colonizer. Well, the colonizer, whether they like it or not, is in control of the game. And if they don't want to play by the rules of the game, they're not going to get very far. And my feeling at this point is maybe they don't want to get very far. They would rather get the public accolades that they have stood before the United Nations and defended the people of Guam.
Now, it's a good thing that some have gone to the United Nations to apprise them of our I would say plight. However, as being under the American flag and how many generations have undergone education and higher education and entire careers within the federal government and with a great deal of understanding and specialized knowledge about what makes the U.S. really tick where it concerns the territories. We don't seem to be very effective in playing the game to win. And every time I bring this up because we aren't putting our best foot forward. And the latest example of that is this resolution, House Resolution 641, that Michael Nicholas has co-sponsored. The story is in today's Guam Daily Post on page 4. And I printed it out and took a look at it. And it's just amazing that this would come up, and I've got a whole thing on this, but if I give everyone a chance to go take a look at it, and I pulled the resolution down, and it's just amazing how we can play a rhetorical game such as the one with compact impact assistance aid. And not get down to understanding exactly how to work within the federal government's own rules to beat them at their own game. It's the same thing that goes on with the preservation of archaeologically significant remains up at Northwest Field, because you don't see that same kind of scrutiny when there's an excavator going down the main street of Agate, putting in sewer lines, or the clearing of private land, big tracts of private land for big developments. You see absolutely zero interest And if we, and also we have people who can go down deep into those federal regulations and the federal procedures, and can find where the military is violating unless those were negotiated away on that programmatic agreement, and that our political leaders and their appointees and staffs already signed off, so that they neutered us in being able to use the federal government's own laws and regulations against them.
Well, that's why they're at the United Nations. They're going for the brownie points, not the win. You know, because I was listening to some people talking about. I mean, go back to Regine and Josh. You know, they're talking about how the federal government doesn't listen to us and doesn't pay any attention to our petitions or our culture or anything, and yet they were the ones that stopped Paget.
Oh yeah, yeah, and Paget.
The military was going.
Yeah, the military said this is what we need, and this is optimal among all of the areas that we've looked at. This is optimal, and they could have said Sedza Bay or Seti Bay or some other place, right? They didn't. They said Paget, and Paget is a treasure trove of archaeologically significant artifacts in place, but you don't see the government of Guam appropriating $3 million for a systematic excavation and study of Paget.
Or preservation.
Well, you know, but study, because the concern is that if you tear it up, then it can't be studied. But they're not studying where we do have. And yes, that area up in Northwest Field should be studied. It should be, and in the NCS, the base, should be studied, should have been studied. And it should have been studied before.
A long time ago.
Yeah, and how long has this buildup been delayed? And that's when it should have started. They should have said, we're gonna appropriate the money to send our own people in there, who are they're not going to interfere with the military's plans for the area. But we're going to go through and do a deep investigation of what's there before you roll bulldozers. But no, this did not happen, and we have not put our money where our mouth is. But they want to put their mouth, but they don't want to put the money.
Well, that's a chronic problem, and why I say that we have a long way to go before we're even ready to have that conversation on decolonization.
Oh, we're not that far away from it. We just have to have the same people who are in right now need to just go to bed early tonight and say their prayers and go to sleep. Don't drink, don't run around, don't do anything else. Just go to sleep, meditate on this, and wake up tomorrow morning and resolve to do things right. Now, I keep waking up and looking at the newspaper headlines to see whether, they've found religion or not, but they haven't.
Yeah.
They just don't.
Yeah.
And now, but it's not that far away.
The New York Times.
We have the people who can do it. We've elected them into office. We qualified them to do this job for us. And then they've selected staff.
The political will to do it. That's
Well,
the problem.
Do we have the political will to do it?
Well, that's where we keep changing politicians until we get the right group in there. Because what we're getting politicians. We're not getting public servants, and that's a big flaw in the system. The system, the primary election and the party system, where candidates have to be vetted by the parties and have to be members in good standing and all that. That's what's holding us back from getting public servants into office. But we've got a couple of elections. We've started the process. We've gotten a few public servants into office, and this next election we'll clean house and get a few more. And hopefully by the 2022 election, we'll have a majority of the politicians that are in office be public servants first. But we won't know until they get in office. I mean, every one of the people that ran on certain things. They were going to fix Guam Memorial Hospital. They were going to roll back the business privilege tax. They were going to roll back the fuel tax. They were going to roll back the 1% increase on buildings of $1 million or more.
Education was going to be the top priority.
Yeah, education was going to be the top priority, and they were going to solve all the problems at Guam Memorial Hospital.
Yeah.
And what did they do? They reinstituted casino gambling at the Liberation Day Carnival. They
legalized marijuana.
Legalized marijuana. They gutted Guam Memorial Hospital's finances, guaranteeing that the institution will fail. So at some point in time, that will be forced because the politicians did a lousy job taking care of that precious public asset. Will be forced to get a new one eventually.
Yeah, and so the question is, do we build one or we buy one? Buy one that's already built. What a choice. Oh, another bond. Hey, we get to go out in the market and float another bond.
Well, right now we're at our credit limit. That's why there hasn't been too much bond issues right now, because with that $30 million bond that was just issued, we're like probably, I think the remaining debt ceiling limit is about $55 to $60 million. There's not enough there for a real good pork barrel project. That's why a priority of this administration is to reappraise all the properties on Guam and to raise the debt ceiling, because even if they doubled the property taxes in the reevaluation, that would only increase it from 26 to 52 million. But if they raise the value of all the property, that would lift our credit limit up by another $300-400 million. Then they can do some real pork barrel borrowing. And what would be better than to go to the people and say, if we don't, we'll line up all the doctors and administrators and have them parade through the legislature saying, if we don't get a new hospital, people will start dying, like they did when they were trying to float that $452 million bond during the Cabo administration.
And nobody stopped to think that we have people who just die anyway. I mean, we're going to have how many babies born? We're going to have people who are going to die from natural and accidental causes and self-inflicted,
Yeah.
And chronic, they may not die here, but they die.
That our politicians did not take care of that asset. Rather than maintain the asset, they used the money for things like, I don't know, let's send 2 people to London for a workshop they could take online for less than $1,000.
Well, let's give one person 4 jobs
to do it.
Let's give one person 3 jobs or 4 jobs and pay them to do 4 jobs, because all these jobs need to be done, and we can't hire them and not compensate them.
And then my favorite, let's go ahead and hire 154 more people for a facility that has already got twice as many people as a comparable institution in the United States would have. So
but why wouldn't you do that? You just got elected.
Well, that's why I said, for 2 years I was campaigning to get a receiver put in at Guam Memorial Hospital so that we could fix it like we fixed the dump, because until we take the politics out of, and boy, did we get way off course talking about self-determination. Let's go back to self-determination.
Well, it is. We are determining our own future by our daily activities, whether we and putting up with the quality of leadership that we have today. We elected people. We elected people to address these problems. It's almost a year, and we don't see progress. And
actually, we see regression on almost every issue.
I was speaking with somebody today who is a long time engaged person in political marketing, and we just had to take a few minutes to just compare notes, and what he was saying was the current governor's biggest problem is herself, because she's got all the tools, she's got all the confidence of the people, the endorsement, and she hasn't done anything with it. And it's not us. It's not lack of resources. Is that she hasn't surrounded herself with doers, and she has not pressed for the improvements that she herself promised the people. And he was saying that she would be she may become Guam's first single-term governor. And here we are, it's not even 1 year into her term, and already we're talking about that. That is how far backwards we've gone in a year. Backwards from the good old days of Eddie Calvo.
Yeah, I can't think of it. Yeah, you know, I was talking to somebody else earlier. I said, you know, it's ironic that I'm looking at the Calvo administration as the good old days.
Yeah. Well, on that note, let's take a break here. Okay, and we'll come back after this one break, and we will drill down to some of the things that we need to get out, well, that we said we would get to on self-determination. Okay, Real Joe, let's take our break, and we'll come right back with Ken Leon Guerrero and Tall Tales after this.
In life, we all have the ability to make a difference, to make an impact on someone's life. As we look around us, time never stops, but we are filled with endless moments of gratitude. The art of giving is incorporated in so many different ways. At Guam Gift Baskets, we want to be able to express your gratitude and love to those who you care about. Show your appreciation with a gift made with love this holiday season. Visit our website at guamgiftbaskets.com. See the smiles, touch their hearts, feel the experience.
Life happens. You need to go to work. The kids need to go to school. There are family events, friend events, any event, and everyone needs to communicate. When you need mobile services that you know you can rely on, choose GTA. As the winner of Ookla's 2019 award for Best Mobile Coverage on Guam, you can rely on us to offer you better plans to modernize your life, fit your needs, and keep you connected. So visit us today and let us help you connect. GTA, we start with you.
Okay, and yeah, to the post, as if we weren't running already, you know. So, Ken.
Yes.
How do you? I mean, you came up with your own survey of 743 adult residents, and calculated the margin of error to be about 3.6% on preferred political status, and you included no change as one of the options. How could so many people really prefer that we stay where we're at?
Well, that goes back to a lack of confidence in the government, because they look at the government we have now as the template for any future governance that we would have under any status, whether it is independence or statehood. And the reason why I put the no change in there is because in order for any petition that we submit to the U.S. Congress for consideration, no change must be an option.
Why is that?
Puerto Rico tried 3 times. They've submitted a petition 3 times in the last 30 years. They've submitted petitions to change status. The first 2 times, they did not include the status quo. Congress rejected
for a plebiscite. In the plebiscite. And that was a plebiscite that included everyone, right? It wasn't like a Puerto Rican only plebiscite.
No, it was a plebiscite of all residents of Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
And it was rejected because residents were not given the option to maintain the status quo. So the first
this is Congress, not the UN.
Yeah, Congress, not the UN. The third time they put the no change option in, and Congress rejected it a third time. But the reason they rejected it was that only a minority of the population turned out to vote. 19% of the population voted because the rest of the population was protesting it for whatever reasons. So even though they had the no change option, and statehood got like 75 or 80% of those that voted, but 80% and 19% of the adult population was insufficient voter participation in the plebiscite. And that's the other thing that I'm fighting against with this. In fact, since no one was standing up for the no change vote, I sent out a press release that Guam Citizens for Public Accountability is going to stand up and represent the no change option, so that we could give people who want to maintain the status quo a champion, because we have a champion for independence, we have a champion for statehood, but no one is talking about the no change option. And those are the only three that Congress is going to consider. The free association is not a valid option.
No, because you have to be independent to be in order to enter into an association.
Yeah. So what we're going to do through our operation here is help push the conversations and discussions forward. Now, since 54% of the population already prefers the no change option, it's going to force the independent and the statehood options to really do their homework. They're going to have to build a compelling reason why voters should consider independence or statehood, but they're also going to have to get over the fact that it can be only a Chamorro-only vote.
Well,
and the problem with that,
there is a problem with the Chamorro-only vote. But it's a different kind of a hurdle, because this has been something that was kind of promised some time back. It's been promised for generations. And I'm not quite sure whether the promise came from the federal government or from ourselves, from our own local government. But at some point, that itch has to be scratched. And it doesn't have to be binding, but it does have to be taken, in my opinion. And or else it's just kicking that can down the road.
How do you prove who's Chamorro and who isn't?
It's not a matter of Chamorro, except the way that the government of Guam has been interchangeably using Chamorro and native inhabitant, and this has also been cited in the Davis case about how the government of Guam has been using the terms interchangeably, and so it became a racist grounds. Now, before the civil rights legislation, well, actually it goes back to the 14th Amendment, but civil rights in the 1960s. Now the federal government cannot allow this to be a basis, and unfortunately the government of Guam is not the right advocate to conduct the Chamorro, so-called Chamorro-only vote. But the Chamorros have to have a vote to tell each other, so that this is settled. It's not a matter.